I wasted a decade of my life drinking alcohol. I spent my 20s drunk. It started out as what I thought was probably normal. Partying on weekends, having a few drinks with the boys, getting absolutely annihilated on a Friday night after a long week. But my drinking progressed. I became a daily drinker. At 20, I was regularly drinking the next morning to curb my hangovers. At 22, I started drinking in the mornings, and when I say mornings, I mean as soon as I woke up. I kept a bottle of Jameson on the floor beside my bed so I could swig a couple of ounces upon gaining consciousness. I would top off my morning coffee with booze for on my way to school, and it only got worse throughout my 20s, and along with it, my shame, my guilt, my sense of loss of control over my life. I never seemed to overdo it though in my early 20s. It wasn't until my late 20s, 27, 28, 29, when it got really out of hand. When I started to feel the consequences of my actions. I was off the wall in my late 20s. I had zero self-control. But I still kept drinking. Why? Why would I continue drinking so much despite negative consequences? I was damaging relationships, sabotaging my career, hurting my body and my self-respect. I swore off drinking countless times, only to return to the bottle. I was wasting so much money that I could have done something else with, and I'll talk about that more later in this video. Why did I do this? Why did I keep drinking? Well, it's simple. I loved what alcohol did to me. I loved the effects it produced. I hated myself, and alcohol washed away that hate. It took a while for me to understand the truth about my alcohol use, why I drank the way I did, and why I could not control my drinking, and it took a long time to understand how I would eventually gain control back over my life. Let's start from the beginning. When I was young, in my teens, even before that, I was very insecure about my body. I thought I was too skinny, too ugly, not tall enough, not strong enough. I felt like a runt. I was shy. I felt that people didn't like me. I was scared of my own skin. The first time I drank alcohol, I was disgusted by the taste, but I felt something happen. I felt good about myself. Alcohol became my answer. Alcohol allowed me to be a person that I liked. Throughout high school, I waited for the weekend so I could drink. I could come out of my shell. I could flirt with girls. I had an easier time socializing with guys. Every weekend party would turn out the same. Me blacking out, hungover and puking the next day, but that didn't matter because alcohol was doing for me what I could not do for myself. Alcohol became my confidence. Alcohol made the world bearable. My 20s was more of the same, but now I was an adult. I was free and on my own with a good job. Alcohol masked every fear and insecurity I had. It suppressed my emotions and it started to shelter me from the toxic and harmful tendencies I was starting to develop. I became a liar. I would lie straight to your face about something I already knew you knew the truth about. I became controlling in my relationships and I tried to manipulate other people's thoughts about me. I became very self-obsessed and concerned with my identity and how people were perceiving me. Alcohol began to stop working like it once did. Now I was drunk and depressed. I found solace in materialism. I bought a fancy BMW. I paid thousands upon thousands of dollars on clothes. My need for validation grew stronger. It was stronger than it ever was before. I did what was ever necessary to get the attention from other people. When I didn't get the attention I was seeking, in the way that I wanted it, I became resentful and angry. The pattern continued, and alcohol continued to cease to work.
I don't think the liquor's working for me anymore, Bendingo.
I tried going sober a few times, but after a few weeks, my mind would trick me into thinking I'd be able to control my usage. The same exact cycle would continue, except it would get worse every time. I knew I had a problem. I knew I was an alcoholic, and I was okay with that. I romanticized it. I related myself to Don Draper from Mad Men, Hank Moody from Californication. In my mind, I was a rock star, and if someone thought otherwise, well, then there was a problem with them and not me. At 27, I discovered what cocaine can do. I had experimented with cocaine in the past a few times, but was never crazy about it. However, at 27, alcohol was failing me, so cocaine became my new best friend. It now did for me what alcohol could not. I became a daily and morning cocaine user. I would wake up and snort it. I would snort it on the car ride to work. I would snort it all day at work and all evening. There were weeks where I would get only 4 hours of sleep. Cocaine took me to new levels. I loved it. And I told myself that I was going to do it for the rest of my life. And alcohol, well, I continued to drink it as much as I ever have, going as far to drink Listerine when I would run out of booze. I didn't care about anything except for cocaine and alcohol. I started missing work more and more because I didn't care. I stopped talking to everyone who loved me. I isolated myself from the world because they didn't get me. In 2019, I spent $40,000 on cocaine alone, being high every waking moment. I would stay up all week on it, drinking and snorting, sleeping for 24 hours straight only on Sundays. I sold my BMW for $30,000 and it all went to drugs and alcohol. I depleted all the money I had. I racked up $20,000 in credit card debt, all for drugs and alcohol. After heavy use of cocaine for a couple of years, I had a breakdown. I had been hiding in my basement for a couple of weeks, scared of the outside world, urinating in empty whiskey bottles because I didn't want to go upstairs to the bathroom. When I realized I was at the end of my line, I was out of money, I ruined my relationships, work was going to fire me, I was missing bill payments. I was done. It was time to take control back of my life. And I knew I had to do it sober. Being sober terrified me. I was dependent on drugs and alcohol for 15 years. Drugs and alcohol treated the internal condition I was suffering from, that condition being my hatred for myself. Drugs and alcohol was the only thing that made life bearable. They made life easier, and they made life more interesting. And what would happen when I can't use them anymore? I would have to be sober in this world. I was afraid I would become boring, uninteresting, I would lose my edge. It's ironic because the way I was living was animalistic. I was depressed and miserable, and I was worried about being boring. I had no other choice but to be a little boring. After speaking with a therapist, it was cemented in my mind that I cannot control my drinking, and if I was to return to drinking even just a sip, that I would go down the path I did every time in the past.
Okay, you know what? Let's give me that thing. I'll do one. We gonna do one.
My therapist helped me audit my past use of alcohol. Every time I tried to control my drinking, I failed. Every time I told myself I'd only have one drink with dinner, I failed. Every time I planned on only getting a six-pack and going to bed right after, I failed. Every time I ran out of booze, I would always find a way to get more.
I'm a drunk, Dip. Drunks can always get booze.
Once I started drinking, I could not stop and I had no power over myself. It was anyone's guess as to what I was going to say or do once I started drinking, so the only solution is to not drink in the first place. This was a huge realization. I can't drink and I'll never be able to be a person who can sit down and have a single glass of wine with dinner. My therapist recommended that I go to rehab to rebuild myself. After all, I had no idea how to live in this world sober. I accepted. I was finally setting my ego aside and letting other people help me. Rehab was a necessary experience for me.
And she said, hey, you're not just going to the therapist now. You're just not just talking about this. You got to go somewhere and sort this shit out. So that's what I did. So rehab really worked for me.
I was torn down into pieces. The unhealthy ones were discarded and I was rebuilt with the healthy ones. I came out of rehab with a different mindset. I could no longer let myself lie to myself. No more bullshitting myself. I would catch myself making excuses. I would catch myself trying to be a victim. I would catch myself trying to blame others. I could no longer do it. I adopted a mindset of acceptance and responsibility for my past and for my future. I came out of rehab understanding that I needed to stop pretending to be somebody I was not. I was more motivated ever to find out who the person I was.
Who are you?
Then came AA. I had my reservations about Alcoholics Anonymous and the word God. AA wouldn't work for me. It's just a bunch of drunks whining to each other.
Don't get that floating around town. Last thing I need is people to think I'm some drunk, alky loser.
But like I already said, I couldn't bullshit myself anymore. AA is not what I thought it was, and AA works for people. That's the truth. And there's nothing special about me where AA wouldn't work for me. Every reservation I had was just my warped, alcoholic ego trying to protect itself, trying to maintain control over my life. It was recommended by a member of AA to not worry about all the God stuff and whatever else I thought I knew about AA, and just dive into the 12-step program and do what the program says. I did. I started the steps, and I must say that there's not a single greater influence on my sobriety than the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. After completing the 5th step, I was driving home and I was overtaken by a fulfilling, warm feeling inside of me. A feeling that I never felt before. A feeling that drugs and alcohol never gave me. I started bawling in my car. I started to feel a wave of immense love for myself. AA was doing for me what alcohol and drugs never could. I was comfortable in my skin. I continued working the steps and continued healing. And best of all, I had absolutely zero desire to drink. Because that's what the problem always was. The problem was never me being drunk, although I created a lot of problems while drinking, but the problem was my desire to drink, which always led me back to drink. AA taught me that this problem was a sickness of my spirit, or a spiritual malady, and that's what AA does. AA, for a lack of a better phrase, heals your spiritual malady, or spiritual sickness, and it's that spiritual sickness that blocks us from living as the person who we truly are. After completing the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous and continuing to live my life within the 12 steps, I began to live a life with new freedom and happiness, not regretting my past and not wishing to shut the door on it, because I understand how my experience can help others. My feeling of pity and uselessness had disappeared. I started to lose interest in selfish things, and I gained new interest in my fellow humans and the world around me. My whole attitude and outlook on life changed. Fear of people and anything money-related was gone. I began to have faith that everything will be alright no matter what situation I found myself in. Situations that used to baffle me are easily handled now. Anything life throws at me is not a problem. I'll figure it out. I live with peace in my heart. I've stopped trying to control everything and I've surrendered to reality. Whatever God is, I experience it in everyday living. God is everything and it is everywhere. God is the flow of the universe, and I am a part of that universe, connected to everything and everyone. Every atom in my body and yours came from the exact same point in space and time. We are as old as the universe. Everything is as old as the universe, just recycled into different forms. We are the universe. The universe is God, and God exists within us. I look back at my old self, the insecure child I was, the scared and very intoxicated adult I was, and I feel nothing but love for him. He was just doing the best he could, and if it wasn't for him, I never would be where I am now, at peace and sober.